Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Country Education Partnership Pre-Professional Development Spring Series. The Spring Series continues the themes that were developed during the very successful Autumn and Winter Series. My name is Brendan Ryan. The Country Education Partnership would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the various lands in which we're meeting today and pay our respects to past, present and emerging leaders. Today's first session is the first in a four-part series, which will be conducted over the next 4 Wednesday afternoons. And our topic today is building a strong and sustainable culture. It's my pleasure to introduce our Chief Executive Officer, Mark McClay, who will provide a welcome and an update regarding current CEP activities. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Brendan. So CEP, we are a non-profit organisation who supports all rural schools across Victoria, regardless of the sector. The content of these sessions has been driven and instigated by practising school principals across the state. So the content very much driven by within. We thank all the presenters today who are kindly giving of their time for free so that we can provide this service at no cost. So apologies, Daniel, Jane, Dave and Tyron, if you're expecting a check in the mail. It's not coming.
No.
And we very much look forward to the first of the 4 series today. And the session is recorded and many choose to watch the recording at a later date. So, and we know many have enjoyed it so much they've gone back to watch series 1 and 2. So I'll pass back to Brendan and then to Morris.
Thanks, Mark. Now some housekeeping. As usual, the session will take 1 hour, so we'll conclude the session by 5 p.m. As Mark indicated, the program is being recorded, so there'll be an opportunity to review the session whenever convenient online. And past sessions in the first 2 series are also available online. If you have a question, please include that in the chat box and we'll endeavour to respond to any questions today. And if that's not possible, we'll get back to you at a later date. And at the conclusion of the session, there will be a survey, and we would really encourage everybody to complete that survey before signing off today. I'd now like to hand over to our program manager, Morris Billy, who will introduce our guests and facilitate today's discussion. Over to you, Morris.
Thanks, Brendan, and welcome officially everybody to this particular session of PD Online. And as introduced earlier on, our theme today is building a strong and sustainable school culture. And on a day where everybody seems to be talking about NAPLAN results, it'll be interesting to see how our guests, and we have the who's who of guests today, how they might look at linking in results to culture and how we measure those types of events. So I'm looking forward to hearing the insights of our experts today, of which we have quite a few. So, and in introducing this topic, it made me think about the words of Adam Voigt recently when he spoke at a conference that I was listening to online, where he sort of started by saying, you know, when you ask people about the importance of school culture, everybody goes, yes, it's one of the most important things. And then when you ask the follow-up question about, well, how do you define school culture? What is it? What does it look like? People are less forthcoming with their thought process and how you actually define it. So, and that's something that's always played on the back of my mind as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing from our guests today about their definitions of school culture, what it looks like and how you put it into practice. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, and that's Daniel Wells from Korumburra Primary School. I had the pleasure of being in Korumburra last week. Unfortunately, didn't have time to catch up with Daniel, but it's fantastic that he's here today. So Daniel, I'll hand over to you and welcome.
Thank you. Hi all, and thanks Maurice for the introduction. So no, look, it's a real privilege to jump online and have the opportunity to speak with you all this afternoon. So it's my first time speaking through WebEx as a guest speaker. So plenty of WebEx over the last few years, but first time guest speaking. So I'll try not to do too much of a talk fest and we'll see how we go. But thank you for giving up your time this afternoon. So So as Maurice mentioned, my name's Dan Wells and I'm the AP at Korumburra Primary School. So I've been in this role for 7 years now and have been fortunate enough to be a part of this school community for the last 10. Prior to life here at Korumburra Primary School, I grew up and taught back overseas in the United Kingdom before moving out here with my now Aussie wife and 3 kids. So today's topic was great. It really captured me when Mark first sent me an email around building a strong and sustainable culture. And Maurice, a bit like you touched on, we always talk about our culture and how proud we are, but to define it succinctly, it's pretty tricky. And, you know, I tend to try and just simplify things down a bit. And in very simplistic terms, it's happy staff, happy kids, happy families. And I'll touch on some of that as I speak shortly. So feel free to stop me along the way and ask some questions. So look, pretty excited. I believe culture does underpin everything. It can be seen in the sporting field as an example. So across footy teams, soccer teams, and even the great Matildas over the last few weeks. It can be seen in the big blue chip companies such as Google, Twitter, Apple, which we know internationally. And it can be seen in our great schools here across Victoria, from staff rooms right the way into classrooms. So culture for me really is key. And the reality is we're a relationship-based species, and relationships help support strong culture and build positive cultures across all those industries. The bit that's always or generally a bit trickier to land is how to then create sustainability in a climate where physical and human resources are changing yearly, termly, and sometimes even daily on the ground in schools. So before I get into things, I'm hoping you'll grab a few take-homes, even if it's just 1 or 2 strategies or ideas or approaches you can take back and share with your colleagues. And I've tried to articulate them really clearly as I speak. So again, just stop me if you've got any queries. Also, quick disclaimer before I start. So KPS, I don't by any means think we are perfect at all. We certainly don't have all the answers, and we're very much on a learning journey ourselves in a lot of ways. But we are always trying to sharpen our swords, so to speak, and it's a term my friend and I refer to quite a lot. We basically pride ourselves and aim to provide a safe and predictable space for our staff, allowing them to confidently give feedback and know their ideas, thoughts and opinions will be valued and listened to. The overwhelming feedback we got from our last school review, which was going back 18 months ago, was that we have got a really good school culture, a strong school culture, creating the perfect springboard to then look at taking our school from being good to being great, with that really high level of focus around teaching and learning. So it's been a really exciting place for us to get to, because for a number of years leading up to that, it was around changing and building that culture, and to get the feedback from a number of professionals coming in, observing the school, talking to kids, talking to families, talking to staff, to know we're in that space was really great. So it's something we're definitely proud of, my principal and I and our staff, and it's definitely work we've been working on for the last several years. So I took the time to chat with some colleagues and reflect on sort of what key elements they felt have helped us over the years build a strong and sustainable culture. And first up, we always try to approach new problems of practice across our school by asking and selling the why to and with staff. So apologies if you've seen it, but if you haven't seen the Simon Sinek's TED Talk around the why, make sure you check it out with your staff. Have a look on YouTube. It's a great watch for staff, and it can be used to really flip staff's thinking and prompt some really good discussions. So that was Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. So by starting with the why rather than the how, it's helped us on our journey, particularly with our leadership team, the PLC leaders and our classroom teachers, to get some really good buy-in from staff, from their teams and from students and families around some of our biggest school change. Again, helping promote a strong culture, which engages staff and it doesn't bypass them. So an example of this in some recent work was our work around focused instruction, and we started it late last year, and the why really came from staff through teacher observations, a bulk of student data, and a lot of work through PLC teams. And we followed a GROW protocol, which was focused around what's our goal, what's our reality, what are our options, and what's next. And what staff walked away from from that session starting this year was a really clear why around the work they were doing in focused instruction. And just to read you 2 examples which we shared with staff, and I'll let you sort of see what you think. decide which one's what. But the first one focuses on the what and one focuses on the why. So an example could be, it's expected that teachers used focused instruction in class as part of our whole school instructional model to help improve student learning across the school. That's one way you could deliver that message to staff. Another way is to say, at our school, we foster independent learners who are given the opportunity to broaden and deepen their knowledge and understanding across all subject areas on a daily basis. How do we do this? We do this through focused instruction. So I'm not sure what you think of those two statements, but the first one was a bit more focused on the what, and which basically was the focused instruction. And the second one was focused more on the why, trying to bring out that sort of intrinsic feelings from within and bring staff on board, focusing less on the how and the what it was going to look like. So some key take homes from that section, I hope. Really, for us, it was about starting with the why and bringing staff on board from the start, from the onset. Creating that safe and predictable space for staff, which I mentioned, it allowed staff to confidently give feedback, and it also allowed leadership to help, it helped leadership take feedback on without offence, because often it was just a sign that staff needed more clarity around the why. So that was really good work for us. So that was some key take homes from that. Any questions just off the bat in regards to any of that stuff? So next up was our leadership team, including myself, the print, and our two instructional leaders. I guess the next big part of work for us, and again, it sounds like a bit of a cliche, but it was walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Sure, it's not the first time you've heard it, but it is one thing our team really tries hard to be an active team player and join staff and students on the journey, rather than presenting the staff as if we have all the answers. We found that staff, students, and even parent buy-in is much more authentic when we've been on the journey with them side by side, making those mistakes, owning those mistakes, discovering new learning, struggling our way through, and being in the learning pit with them. An example of this recently was some whole staff work we were doing around professional learning based on the science of reading, which sort of flows into the science of learning. And a lot of the work in that space with the whole staff, it was really challenging a lot of our thinking, our preconceptions, challenging some of our teaching practices that have been in place for a number of years. It prompted some really high-level conversations, which were great. There was a series of high-level sort of evidence-based readings, which we worked through with some strong protocols in place with the staff. And it just basically modelled that it's an ongoing journey for all of us, but a really good, exciting space to be in, because we were all on that journey together. And I think staff really, really appreciated that. So the key take-homes there: walk the walk, not just talk the talk, embark on the journey together so it doesn't have that sort of that top-down sort of weight to it. What it did mean for us, and one noticing, it may mean that you've got to take something away for staff, clearing the path in a way, and acknowledging that for staff, they're busy people, particular teachers in the class, their plates may already be full and we can't have them overflowing. So if that's the case in your school, as it was for us, it's about them prioritising what you want your focus to be, permitting yourself and your staff to put some tools down in other areas and just focus on what's important, that priority at that moment in time. So it sort of leads on to my next point a little bit around our style of leadership, which is sort of more horizontal, I guess, than vertical. So although my principal and I refer to the leadership team, we place a really high level of importance around being transparent with our staff, with our students, and with our families, showing a high level of vulnerability ourselves. So we don't assume for a second that we're necessarily any better, any more knowledgeable than our staff, but instead we acknowledge the fact that we all have different strengths and different skill sets, and we try to play on those, sort of acting as the puppeteers in a way, or so to speak. And through PDPs and coaching sessions with staff, that one-on-one, the overwhelming feedback from them is they really value that approach, and it's maybe an approach they haven't seen or hasn't been as sort of prevalent in other schools they've worked at, and they relish the opportunity to be recognised for their particular skill set or their knowledge base, rather than recognised for the number of years they've been teaching or the experience they may have under their belt. So A good example recently, and one of my fondest memories actually, was watching two of our graduate teachers step up at one of our staff meetings, and they celebrated and unpacked their whole PLC team student data in front of the whole staff, reflecting on some of the highs, but also some of the lows, and what their team's next steps are to try to sort of pick some of those kids up, or maybe challenge those high learners. And I thought that was a really, really bold thing for them to do, and a really good way for them to sort of show their vulnerability as well. Another example, I guess, just going back a couple of years for us, was showing vulnerability in horizontal leadership in 2019. I could talk a lot about 2019. Basically, we had my principal come back after a year off. We had some highly escalated behaviours, and we had quite a lot of staff in a bit of a rocky space, which for any school culture is not great. So we were able to just get our stuff together, really hit the pause button, down tools on everything, and just focus on our behaviours for a period of time, just to really get things back under control. And I still talk about it today because I remember there were some tears shared amongst the staff. We all put ourselves out there. We were all the same. We all had a really good chat about things, and we didn't leave the room at that staff meeting until we had a strong plan in place, which I'll talk about a bit later on. But the data backed it up, because what was basically put in place through being vulnerable and through that horizontal leadership was an 80% reduction in some of our minor and major behaviours from term 1 to term 2. And we've been able to sustain, embed and build on a lot of that stuff since. So that was great. And I'll touch on some of the finer stuff shortly. So the key take-homes there, just the tools down method in a way. Big problems need to be solved collectively. They can be a sole focus for a period of time, and generally where you put your energy and your focus is where you do get some change. Don't be scared just to pop tools down if there's that big work you want to focus on. And our SEALs certainly backed us in that space, which is great. We talk about, and we sort of coined it the early success method, I guess, but one thing that came out of that is the idea that staff often have quite a small bandwidth for change, given how much stuff they're already expected to manage on a day-to-day basis. So through some scaffolded supports from those conversations in 2019, we were able to sort of help staff get some what we call easy gets, which basically encouraged some buy-in and started to build momentum, because staff could get those easy wins. They get that quick feedback from the kids or from the parents or from each other, and it just builds momentum that way. And then some of the harder gets could then be discussed and worked towards from there, and we're even mapping some of those out now, sort of 3 or 4 years later. So the fine-grained examples I said I'll touch on. Easy gets around that behaviour stuff were things like just permitting staff to explicitly revisit the expected behaviours for their kids at the start of the day for 10 minutes as part of circle time. It was things like making sure that staff get out to their lines timely so that the kids are ready to go and ready to come in, and they're not getting a bit loose. Really, really small things, but things that were easy gets and that had a big impact. Putting together a whole school positive reward system, focusing on a desired behaviour. It sounds like big work, but it was just a quick message. This is what we're looking for across the school. If we see it, this is how you get rewarded, whether it's through a token or whatnot, and just building on that. And there were some quick wins that staff really appreciated. We introduced a 10-minute tag out as well, where if there was a behaviour that needed addressing, Prin, AP, some of the leadership team, whoever was available, go out, take the teacher out for 10 minutes, let them deal with the behaviour or the relationship-based stuff with the student, because they're the ones who have the relationship, and we were happy to provide that support, or if they wanted assistance from us, we could help. So those harder gets came a bit later on, and that might have been things like linking into Compass Chronicle templates, or unpacking and tracking data, or building on our whole school behaviour matrix, for example. So easy gets and big gets was quite good for us. So it leads on to relationships, which I mentioned earlier too, but building strong professional relationships and partnerships with staff, students and families and the wider community are key in building a strong and sustainable culture. So when staff are on board and feel valued, as you know, students are engaged and happy in their learning, and families trust and respect your professional judgment and expertise as teaching staff, it can almost guarantee that culture in the school will be celebrated, whether it's in the school or out in the community, and will naturally become sustainable as more and more people want to jump on board. And that's really nice when you actually hear that. You've got staff wanting to come and work at a school, or you've got families really wanting to enrol their kids because they've heard some great stuff around that culture. Now, don't be fooled. There's always the naysayers, but hey, where would we be without them? They keep us on our toes. And when a school culture is strong, what you soon find is that the naysayers find they either need to jump on board or jump ship. And I know that might sound pretty harsh, but we've seen it happen with a few staff over the years and families, and it's done respectfully. But soon they just realise that culturally they're just not fitting in, and it just doesn't work for them. And it's not wanting to push people out. It's just a natural natural transition, I guess. So again, a couple of quick key take homes, just conscious of time, but value the human before the skill. That's something we try and remind ourselves. So a great person can be taught any skill, whereas we sort of find it a bit harder to teach someone how to be a good person, I guess. And we've also got something we're pretty big on is the no triangles. So if you haven't heard that, it's basically real clarity for staff around what's not expected at the school, and this no triangles policy builds into that. So if I had a problem with my principal Nathan here, or one of my instructional leaders Simon, I'm not going to go and talk to Nathan about Simon. I owe it to Simon in a respectful manner, in a professional environment, to go and talk to Simon about that, and that's the very least I can do. So it's not creating those triangles, and that's worked really well for us. Finally, you can talk to your community and your CRTs. They're often a good source of information. School councils often non-biased and out there. They're sort of in between the school and the parent community. And then CRTs, I know they want to get paid, so they're probably going to say nice things, but I guess it's always nice when you get really positive feedback from your relief teachers who work at a number of schools as well. And we've been lucky enough to secure a few that just work here, which is always good to hear. So now, look, I'm conscious I've probably been talking a while, so I'll finish up my final few points. Now, as boring as it sounds, when words like expectations, protocols, norms and process maps are used, they've actually been key in ensuring we build a strong and sustainable school culture as well. So without these living documents in place, that were again designed and created with staff, we would struggle to ensure sustainability around our school culture. So the pub test for me, and we haven't quite got there yet, is imagining that both myself and my principal are one day lucky enough to be seconded over to Hawaii or something by the Department of Education to go and set up a beautiful new school. And we're still able to feel confident that although we're not at Korumburra Primary School, and although the leadership will change in the school, the culture will remain strong and students will still continue to flourish. So key take home there, document processes, state the expectations and have strong norms and protocols in place that again have been created side by side with staff and continue to be reviewed by staff. So that's a really important one. Finally, don't forget to have some fun along the way. In schools, laughter is undoubtedly the best medicine, and at times it's a fantastic feeling when you're able to have fun with staff whilst maintaining their respect and gaining their loyalty over time. So make sure you keep 30 minutes a day, I think they say you should aim for laughter, just to stimulate, stimulate your heart, your lungs and your muscles. So give it a go and see how you go. But thank you for listening. A bit of a talk fest from me, but happy to answer some questions and have a chat shortly.
Thanks, Dan. I love that presentation because, as you said in the beginning, that there's some real clear things that people can take away from that. And as you said, there's 2 or 3 things that people can walk away and put into action. I do have a question for you, but I might leave that till later because it's probably a question that everyone might have an opportunity to share on, and it might be something that some of our other guests touch in their presentations as well. So we'll give you a chance to have a bit of a break, and we'll come back if we've got some time towards the end. I like the Hawaii idea, but it's probably one small part of Hawaii you wouldn't want to go to at the moment.
Yeah,
that's very true. But the rest of it, absolutely beautiful, and yes, I'd be there as well. So thanks, Dan, for that amazing presentation. I feel like our next guest is almost become a regular as part of our panel now, and someone we do hear from regularly and we love having on board. And I think I've mentioned before that I have known Jane for quite some time and can't speak more highly for her work and as a person and as an individual, and how lucky we are to have her as part of our panel today too. So without further ado, I'll just hand over to Jane Langley from McArthur Primary School. Hi, Jane.
Hi, Morris. Thank you. That is very kind of you. You speak very kindly, and I feel very humbled. So thank you to the CEP. I had the pleasure of doing a presentation in the last series as well. So to be invited back to share again this time around, I feel very grateful for that. So thank you. Dan, thank you for sharing your presentation about culture. It was fantastic. I really liked Simon Senek's work. And I really particularly, just going to the slides, sorry, I really also like his work about finite and infinite games as well. So opposing outcome-driven compared to process-driven. And for me, I'm much more a process-driven person than an outcome-driven person. So that sits really well for me. When we looked at this component around strong and sustainable culture, I guess what I took on this lens, Maris, was around some strategies around how you might create that culture. And when I started this principalship at McArthur Primary School 3 years ago, I started with doing the Evolve course, the Bastow Evolve course at the time. And I really liked this little diagram around how culture is a bit like a Wi-Fi signal. It's like you said with Adam Voigt, we all talk about the importance of school culture, but when we actually try to define what it is or explain it, it can be very difficult. So we can't see it, but we know it's there, and we are very evident when the culture perhaps is not right. So when I arrived here at McArthur Primary 3 years ago, I really tried to feel what the culture of this school might be like. And I tried to get a sense of what it was like by what I could see, what I could hear, and how I felt. But I probably also had a sense before I even chose to apply to be principal here, whether I was a good fit for the culture of this school. So I think that's really important as well. I haven't got the next slide. Hang on a minute. Sorry. Why is that not going across? That's going to be annoying. My apologies. Sorry, Madison. You did such a good job in setting me up, and now it's just, I've lost my slides. There we go. Can you see that?
No.
On your screen? No. Hang on a minute. Sorry. Bear with me. I had all that set up, and then it's just disappeared out of there. Right. Can you see that now? Sorry.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. And I just couldn't shift it. Now we're right. Now is that moving? Beautiful. Yep. Okay. And I also talked about they talked about in the Bastow course that the louder and more frequent the message, the more likely culture is to be embedded in the day-to-day operations of the organisation. So I guess when I arrived here, I also not only looked for that culture, but I looked for how consistently about what I was seeing, what I was hearing, how I was feeling, and what the surveys and the data was indicating to get a sense of what the culture was like within this school. And then the culture here was really around really strong academic rigour. And I felt that my role was not to change that, but to actually help strengthen the Wi-Fi signal that was being sent out to amplify the culture that was already here. So I guess when we think about our ability to develop a school culture or amplify the school culture, we also need to think about the space that we're working in. So for me, I'm in a very small school environment of 33. So I have the great privilege where it's easy to amplify the culture of the school because I'm very visible. But if you are in a bigger school environment, then you may need to make sure that signal is a lot stronger, and you may need to have, of course, other people around your leadership team who help boost that signal as well. So I just think that's a really good analogy. So if we're talking about that sustainable school culture, I'm thinking about the message that I'm sending out. That message needs to be visible in what people see in my actions as a principal and as a leader, and in the communication, in the words I say. It needs to be evident in how I make people feel, It needs to be evident in the words people hear me say, and sometimes also, Maurice, in what I don't say as well. You know, that's perhaps sometimes a skill that we need to practice a little bit more. So for me, you know, my philosophy around leadership is much like Dan's, around horizontal relationships rather than vertical. We value everyone in our team here for what they bring and the strengths that they add to the team. I say that we're a really eclectic team, but together a really good team. My philosophy is around people over paper, so very much that relational approach. And the culture that we want is around having positive and productive classroom environments. And we have an environment where kids and people feel safe and can learn and can get along with each other. And that's our underpinning philosophy of what we do about our culture. So the signal that I want to send out should amplify, for me, what our school's vision, values and goals are. So our goal in this, our new strategic plan, is about being responsive teachers in a stimulating learning environment, and to ensure that we're teaching at our point of need. So I'm very clear and precise and strategic in thinking about how am I communicating that signal and that vision and goal out to our community. And I think Dan talked about that around making sure it's really clear what is expected. So we need to make sure that if we know what the signal is, we know what the message is that we're sending out to our community around the culture that we want, it needs to be as clear to everyone else as it is to us. And I thought about, Maurice, when I chose this this image with the glasses. You know, some people will be able to receive the message without glasses, but other people might need a varying level of prescriptions to be able to see the signal as clearly as what I think it is that I'm sending out. So part of our culture that we're setting here is around one of high expectations and high support. So to make sure that it's really clear to our staff that the culture that we want is around being responsive teachers in a stimulating learning environment. We've talked to staff around what my expectations, or what our expectations are around teachers' role in being able to achieve that and work towards that goal, but then also around the amount of support that I need to put into place to achieve that. So I want everyone to feel valued, but I want everyone here to make sure they've got work-life balance as well. So being very transparent in setting with staff around, if the expectations are around achieving that goal, then my commitment is to make sure that you receive the time allocation and the resources that you need to achieve it, to make sure we're implementing that union agreement. But to also make sure if people have got increased expectations of them across the terms, so they're taking on extra PD or extra responsibilities, that I'll provide that extra support for them as well, because I want for our staff to be effective in the time that they're here and to be able to have that work-life balance as well. So it's been really clear and transparent is these are the expectations. I'll also provide you with support, but make sure in the time that you're here at school, you're effective with the time that you're being allocated or being provided with. Part of our other school culture here is around quality over quantity. So we've really worked hard to make sure that we are reducing and decluttering what we do. So it's about doing less and doing it well is really, really important. And one of our other key drivers for us is around being intrinsically motivated. So our expectations of our students is we do the right thing because that's what we do to be a good learner. That's what we do to be part of our community, and that's what we do to get along with others, rather than those extrinsic motivations. So that sort of underpins part of our culture. So it needs to be really important around for our culture, all that the strength may vary each day depending on the conditions. You know, some days in schools, places can be a little bit more wavy. There's a lot more going on. At times, a bit more foggy, can be a bit busy. So, but I need to be consistent in the messages that I'm sending out. And that's around people over paper. Relationships are important. High quality teaching. Less is more. responsive teachers in stimulating learning environments. So it's about the little things that we do and say every day. And I think, Dan, you talked about that, the little things that have the biggest impact. Sorry, it's just chipped out again on me. Click off that. Now we're right. For me, I always make sure it's about making the invisible visible. So that message always links back to our school vision, our values, and our goals. So part of our culture is making sure that what we're working towards, what's important to us as a school, our school values of respect, connect, and learn, and that goal of being responsive teachers in a stimulating learning environment, that I actually make that transparent in our newsletter, in my bulletins to staff, in my bulletins out to our parent community, in the conversations that I have with staff, that I have with kids, that I have with parents. It's in my school council report. So everything links back to, we're doing this because, you know, at this school, we are responsive teachers in a stimulating learning environment. At this school, we want every child to leave here with the best academic outcomes possible, with that strong rigor for learning, but having a really strong sense of who they are as a person. And when we're thinking about that culture, what we shine the light on, we get more of. So I'm very conscious around shining light on the positive behaviours. What I want to see more of is what I amplify. And then lastly, then what I would hope is with that sustainability is that that voice of the leader becomes the silent voice of the learner. So what people were seeing me do, what people were hearing me say, how I was making people feel is what I would hope that our staff and our students and our parents are also doing in their behaviours. So now I'm seeing those behaviours in our staff, in our students, in our parent community. I'm hearing those words and I have that same sense of feeling that I've embedded into other people. So that's just a snapshot across there, Morris. But I like that aspect around the Wi-Fi signal, you know. Yes, we want to make sure it's strong.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Jane. And there's some, again, like we heard from Dan earlier on, there's some real simple takeouts from the message, and you know, the focus on the positive and the less is more type of stuff was fantastic. And I was particularly taken by your reference around the different strength of the glasses that people see things through. That's such a simple notion, but it just resonates so much about how a group of people can be listening and hearing the same thing, but have a slightly different perspective and revisiting that. And it, you know, reminded me of someone who I worked with recently who said that if you're into horse racing or know anything about horses, said that I may have needed blinkers because I get distracted very easily. So I need to focus with my glasses, but also have those distractions beside me. So blinkers would be a really good thing. So I don't just look for the shiny object on each side. So that might be another layer to the conversation for us easily distracted people in that. So thanks, Jane. And
thanks, Morris.
I think we'll come back with some questions, hopefully, if we've got some time. The next person who's up to speak is somebody that I wouldn't even start listing all the schools he's worked at because there's so many. He now classified as a retired school principal, but I don't know whether you're actually ever fully retired. You might just be taking a bit of a permanent break, but having him here today is a part of that and the wealth of experience and knowledge. So Dave, I'd like to welcome you officially here today. I don't know whether you like the title retired school principal, but that's what Mark told me to call you. So Dave, over to you, and you can maybe share some of your wisdom and thoughts in this space now.
My goodness, I feel, the people before me have spoken so well and are still at the chalk face. I am retired, but yeah, you're right, it doesn't leave you. Basically, what I've done is written down a heap of general overviews about things in my 44 years of teaching and leading that I'd like to share with you. But so many things that have been mentioned by Dan and Jane have resonated here, and I'm ticking them off as I go. So basically, what I've done is looked at some observable elements of a good staff culture at any site. And I've said here that staff enjoy being at the work site. You can feel that positive behaviour. They're motivated and they feel valued. And you mentioned that, Dan. Staff relationships with each other, students and the wider community are positive. Staff are modelling being lifelong learners. I think that's really important, and feel comfortable in taking risks. Now, it was mentioned or highlighted by you, Dan, I think, too, about people, those student teachers getting up there and having a go like that. Staff are working collegiately and effectively in team situations. All staff are contributing and invested in achieving agreed to common goals. Staff wellbeing is being monitored and catered for effectively as well. I think that's really important. Communication between staff members is honest, two-way and respectful. You talked about the triangles, no triangles, Dan. That was something else that we've used at a couple of sites I've been to, and it works very well. With a staff of 120 teachers, it really did quite well minimise a lot of the stuff that could have escalated if they didn't use that. And staff are using grievance procedures and other policies with confidence now. I've developed over years just a simple sort of way of looking at things, that if we as leaders look after the staff, it's sort of a tongue-in-cheek, oversimplified thing. But if we look after the teachers and get them supported properly, then the children are going to benefit from that. If the children are enjoying coming to school, then the families are generally reasonably happy about the whole thing. And if the families are supporting the school, then basically the department are also quite okay with things. So that's something I've kept in the back of my mind the whole time, that staff are crucially there to, they're the most important people to look after first, and the rest will fall into place. Positive working relationships, to me, the most important thing to understand about, cultivate, develop, is the positive working relationships between people. Being able to communicate effectively is the most important thing to create a good staff culture. Without these, staff cannot share their knowledge, with kids and families, or work effectively as teams to plan common goals. And it's paramount. Leadership qualities are something that I'd like to share and look at. I just brainstormed a list of qualities or actions that I believe would help leaders develop positive relationships and therefore the culture with their peers at their site. I also understand that the reality is of our roles dictate how much time we can actually have at times, and that the size of the site can impact greatly upon their effectiveness, as you were mentioning, Jane, with the size of your site. Be positive as much as possible. Use humour when and if appropriate. We all need a laugh, and as you said, 30 minutes a day is the recommended time. But, show your human side whenever you can. Promote social interactions. Celebrate individual and group achievements. Encourage family involvement as much as possible. Follow through with things. I'm a big stickler for that, and say what you will. When you say something you're going to do it, you do it. This will earn your respect, and you will also be seen as reliable, true to your word. You've got the cred there. Have an open door and people before paper philosophy, highlighting your availability to staff. I'm a great believer in that too. Obviously, again, the size of your site can dictate how much time you can actually give to people, but wherever possible, try and be there for them. Acknowledge that all staff and generally value what each staff member brings to the work site. A site has many more staff than just teachers, and trying to find out something really different about each staff member to be able to engage with them. But anyway, I'll leave it there. Lead from the front, get dirty, get into classrooms, show genuine interest at the chalk face, and enhance your understanding of the staff members' real issues. Once again, it will depend on the size of the site, but once again, you get credit and you get more of an understanding about where staff are coming from with some of their issues if you're there actually observing and seeing the kids interacting in their rooms. And look, that's just one last thing that I wanted to share with you. I don't know, some of you would be aware of it, the fish philosophy. It's been around for years, 1998, I think it started. I saw a couple of smiles there. Put your hand up if you've seen it, right? Or used it. Have you used it, Joe? Yeah. What do you, I found
Yeah.
that it's, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely, and the concept of the stinky fish, isn't it, as well? So yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, bottom line is just get online and Google the fish philosophy for schools. You might find some useful stuff there that you can access and use. The history of it all is there. I could spend hours talking about it, but the bottom line is it's there. It's tried and true in a lot of cases for schools, and not only schools, but businesses in general. And it just, yeah, it's a really good way of building up relationships within a site. It became one of the most watched training videos in the world. I don't get commissioned, by the way, for this. Fish for Schools spoke strongly to educators and helped them connect with their students and each other, builds positive cultures and strengthens relationships, works best when practiced school-wide, so that might be something for a whole school to look at and see whether they'd like to embrace that using common language. And yeah, the staff and the children quite often are there to help co-create the culture of the school with the common stuff that they use. But there's many articles to look at there. Just get on, as I said, get on Google Fish Philosophy for Schools and to read more about it. But it's, yeah, I think it warrants a bit of a look. That's just one thing from years ago, but it's still got lots of value, I think. Look, I was pretty nervous today, to be honest. So I apologise. I haven't been talking professionally for a while, but I guess I'm a friend amongst friends, aren't I?
Very much so. And you've done a wonderful job, Dave.
Oh,
Thank you so much. And for us pescatarians, the fish philosophy strikes right at the heart. So thank you for that. I'll be looking that up after we finish here today. So on that note, we've heard from our three school-based experts, Dan, Jane and Dave. Thanks very much for that. We might have some opportunity for some questions, just conscious of time. Mark, did you want to give any background to Tyron and what he's about to speak to us on in terms of the work of the Academy of Teaching and Learning, or are you happy just to throw straight over to Tyron?
Yeah, happy to go straight to Tyron. I think he can explain it a lot better than me.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, Tyron, over to you. I don't know what your official title is, but I know the subject matter you're going to talk about, so you might want to let us know what your role is. And yeah, over to you, and thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Morris, and thanks for the opportunity, Mark, to be here today. So my name's Tyron Paspa. I'm the Director of the Regional Division in the Victorian Academy of Teaching and Leadership. I have the privilege of having that role, and it certainly feels that way every day. We have, many of you will know the Academy, a statutory authority providing high quality specialist leadership and teaching programs for school leaders and teachers. It's new, and the newest thing about us is the 7 regional centres in Bairnsdale, Ballarat, Bendigo, Geelong, Mildura, Moe and Shepparton. Actually, just behind me is Mildura, and I was up there last week, and it's just an absolutely beautiful place, purpose-built to do professional learning. And we know that professional learning can have a strong impact on school culture, and that professional learning and school culture are mutually reinforcing. I think you can certainly create and sustain your culture at your school with professional learning. I think we saw that coming through really clearly in Jane's presentation, where she shared some of her experience from the Evolve program, an academy program now. And we also know that when teachers engage in purposeful professional learning, it can lead to improved teaching practices, higher student engagement, and cohesive and effective educational environments. So what great foundations to build your school culture. So I'm here to talk a little bit about those regional centres and how that can support you to develop your and sustain your school culture. I'll start with a little bit about what we've learned to date. So these 7 regional centres have begun opening since March this year. And actually by the end of this week, we'll have the keys to all 7, which is a great milestone in itself. Since the opening of the first regional centre in Geelong, we've had 4,500 teachers and school leaders come through our regional centres, which is just a jaw-dropping number for me, because you always have these moments of wonder, and you wonder, will this initiative be picked up? Will people do have the interest that we think they will? But now we're hosting academy professional learning in all corners of the state, and couldn't be more proud. So I'll take you through 3 things today with regards to the Academy Regional Centres, and 3 things we've learned and 3 things we want you to know. So we want to bring high quality resources to you. We want to help you and your teams find people like me, and I'll speak a little bit about that in a moment. And the third thing is to amplify and support your work as a school leader. So on the first one, bringing high quality resources to you, we know we have a good product. We know we have a high quality product in the academy. We know that professional learning can address some of those resource constraints that are often exist in rural and small schools. And these 7 regional centres will support access to those specialised leadership and teaching programs I spoke about a little earlier, with high quality facilitators, technology, and programs that might otherwise be financially or logistically challenging for you to access in regional Victoria. That's also in addition to things like online platforms and shared library of educational resources and other funded programs that we can support with. Really, those resource availabilities through the regional centres level the playing field, so to speak, enable you and your school to access those really high quality education, professional learnings, and effectively bring those high quality resources to you. I mentioned finding people like me, and there's this idea of professional isolation that we know we can experience in regional communities, where you might be one of a few or sometimes the only person doing your job. And that means that there's limited opportunities to collaborate and share ideas with other educators. And so, yes, geography can be that barrier, but sometimes it's also similar school type circumstances, school review points that can create that professional isolation. And the regional centres serve as a platform to amplify connection and to collaborate, to share experiences with peers from neighbouring schools, and to do that professional learning where we know we have those benefits, including peer-to-peer learning, exchange of good practice, lesson ideas and problem-solving strategies. So we really are talking about finding people like me when you're doing professional learning, and you would all be familiar with those connections that you can form in person over lunch or over the professional learning while you're doing it. And finally, I'll just touch on amplifying and supporting your work as a school leader. We know, as I mentioned, we have a high quality product, but it's only as good as the context in which it's applied. And I'm talking about your context, and we want to support you with your work. We know that you've got diverse roles. We know the responsibilities of teachers and principals in small and rural schools are difficult to manage. And what we want to do is support you through that journey and provide relevant professional learning to support the specific needs and challenges faced by schools in regional Victoria, whether it's through workshops focusing on multi-grade classroom strategies, coaching, leadership development, teaching excellence. The benefit here is that, unlike in the metropolitan area, you get a direct input into what we say and what we do and when we do it in regional Victoria. And that opportunity exists because people like Mark are inputting directly into our schedule, into our programs, and really being an advocate of what the Academy has to offer through our regional centres. All of that, of course, is intended to amplify and support the work you do every day as a school leader and in building that culture. So just to summarise, and I know we are short on time, the Academy's regional centres are here to bring you high quality resources to help you and your teams find people like me and to help amplify and support your work as a school leader. And we need some support to help you with your journey. And so I will do a little call to action because we want you to shape what this looks like. And Mark and I have been working on a little survey to understand the needs for professional learning in regional Victorias, and that survey is still open. I'll just post it in the chat. If you do have a moment, we'd really welcome your responses to that survey because our professional learning, as I mentioned, is only as good as the context it's applied within, and we'd love to hear about that context, what's important to you, and how professional learning can help build and sustain that school culture that we've been talking about today. I might stop there because I know I've truncated a little bit, but I want to leave time for questions as Morris alluded to earlier.
Thanks, Tyron. It's really interesting to hear from you about the Academy and the work of the regional centres, and very exciting to see that the keys have been delivered and things are ready to go right across the state. So that's very exciting. I'm not sure that we have a lot of time for questions, so I feel like that we might just need to touch base in regards to, I think the poll is out now, so for people who might be watching and listening, that the poll is available. But just as we wrap up today, and I'm sure if there's any other follow-up questions that people want to add, we can get some of those responses and pass them on as well. But I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank all our presenters today. Tyron, thank you for that presentation right at the end there, and trying to fit it into time. It's always a challenge, so thank you for that. And the wealth of experience that we had earlier on with our guest speakers on the really important topic of the building of a strong and sustainable school culture. So Dan, Jane and Dave, thank you so much for your work, and hopefully we can get you all back in one way, shape or form down the track to continue this journey of presenting our PD online. So without further ado, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I might just wrap it up for me there and hand it back to Brendan.
Thanks very much, Morris. I'd also like to thank those who provided the presentations today. They've been wonderful. I'll remind everybody that the session is being recorded, and you can go back and review the session online at your leisure. Next week's session has a focus on effective student wellbeing, which I think everybody will agree is a significant issue at the moment in the education system. So effective student wellbeing is next week's topic. Now we have two surveys in the chat box there, one for Tyron and a survey concerning today's terrific presentations. So I'd encourage everybody to complete the survey before signing off from today's session. So thanks very much to everybody for joining us today, and please join us again next week and over the next 3 Wednesday afternoons. That will conclude today's session. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.